The two Jills, a psychologist and psychic intuitive, reveal mind-blowing insights that turn psychology, self-help, and conscious teachings on their heads. Why? Because they work. Real help, sincere growth is here. Welcome to Psyched.
Hello and welcome to Psyched Podcast. Hi, Jill.
Hey, Jill.
We're doing Fixers Anonymous today. I think both
I
you and
love
I
it.
have a lot of fun layers of experience here, being fixers and problem solvers, not only for ourselves but also helping other people with their challenges and helping them solve their problems. It can become almost addictive, and it can become such a almost like a subconscious role that we play. And it's so often at the opposite end of feeling zen, feeling inner peace, feeling like you enjoy life and less stress. So let's do
Yes.
it.
Yes, let's do it. Let's get into
Yeah.
it, honestly, because I think that last thing that you said is really, it's so important. It's that, where is our happiness going? Where is our zen going? Where is our joy going? And I personally love my fixer. I really love my fixer. I'm really, really good at it. But at a certain point, I think it just usurped everything and took over my life. Like I became like the one-track pony. And then I would look at people and be like, how can I fix them? And I would look at projects and how can I fix them? Like there wasn't anything that wasn't seen through the lens of, I could fix that. And so I think, lately I'm coming out of that. And that's why I love doing this today. It's so good.
And it's a process for any of us that do have the ability to address problems in a very complete and okay, that's done kind of way. It takes a lot of momentum to get off of that path and get just into a mindset of, can I fix this? Right? Starting with that question, is this something I can fix? Right? A sibling's addiction, somebody else's mental illness, somebody else's financial crisis, a child, especially an adult child or a near adult, young adult child that is having their own challenges with maybe school or friend groups. There are so many ways that it's so healthy to step back and go, is this mine? Can I support them? How can I best support them without feeling that my kind of is on responsibility for fixing that? It's an adjustment. It's hard. I still have a hard time. I'm like, okay, this is not mine. This is not mine. This is not mine. Jill, do you have an example of a
Yeah.
situation where you were ready to kind of get vested in it energetically, all entangled into it, and then you were like, actually, let me step back and untangle from this, and then I'll share I have a
I
big
honestly
example
think I
too.
do it every day, you know. And so that's why, just it is an addiction. That's why we're calling this Fixers Anonymous, because I am addicted to that high of fixing stuff, right? Like I like that. But more recently, I have been saying, is this mine? Is this mine to fix? And it particularly is satisfying when it's in relation to my children. And the reason why it's so satisfying there is because, for instance, my daughter was recently has been having horrible migraines, and they last, just 10 days at a pop. It's just too long. And I realized at a certain point in her suffering, I'm like, I got to kick into gear. I got to get in there. I gotta. And I actually flew home from Florida early because I just wanted to be closer to see what I can do. I was just really in there. And she has doctors, she has professionals, she's got it all going on. And at a certain point, I offered a therapist of mine, and it really pissed her off. And it was a good reminder for me to. And look, obviously I was getting in there because I was so stressed for me and for her, and I just wanted it better. And so there was a lot of justification for me adding another layer of, have you tried this? But it wasn't my place. And God bless her, she blasted me for it. Part migraine, part irritation, part everything. But she really did put me back in my place. And I appreciated it. And what's interesting is that my fixer had not, I waited. It didn't come out right in the very beginning. I was riding the wave and then I couldn't take it anymore. And I did engage. So that's not, it was a success because I waited. It was not a success because I still engaged, but then it became successful again when she put me back in my place and I realized, okay, this isn't mine to fix. And then there is this freedom. It's not even freedom. You get this, like, I felt so proud of her that she was on it and that she was doing it. And so watching her, not thinking about the pain at this point, but watching her take care of her, actually, I don't know, it just brought me a lot of like, this is all right. This is okay. It's not mine, it's hers. And look how well she's doing. Right? Which you don't get. And, when I dive in to fix something, it infantilizes the other person, right? It takes away their sense that they're doing a good job. It really robs them of their feeling of success when they fix something. It's like I'm taking it from them. So allowing other people to fix is a gift.
I like that. There can be, related to what you just said, there can be an element of condescension that the receiver of the help feels, even if it's just subconscious. Because if you really think about it, somebody's saying, basically, and I'm not saying you were doing this, but in general, those of us that are fixers, we're ready to launch. Like, oh, I know exactly who you should see and exactly what to do, or I have the best ideas, maybe better than your ideas, and I'm just gonna unsolicited, unveil them on you for your, for your benefit. To the receiver, that's basically saying, oh, you don't think I got this? You don't think I have a brain and I can figure this out and I know who to call and I know where to start, right? And not everybody's going to, receive it in a condescending way, but some will. And depending on what kind of relationship you have with that person, I know I get annoyed when, I'm talking to somebody I don't know very well, whether it's I'm trying to think of just a totally neutral example. You're, at a restaurant or something and the server walks up and you're talking about like how you had a bad experience on an airline. Oh, you know what you do? And I'm like, I'm not talking to you. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm not talking to you. You know what I mean? Or a neighbor just kind of launching in on they have the answers for you. I do find it disrespectful in a way. So I know for myself with my work, I'm intending to be, and I think I'm good at this, knock on wood, respecting that I do have ideas, but you get to decide whether they're better than your own ideas. You get to decide what you say yes to.
Yeah.
But I do have good ideas. And with my family and friends and loved ones, I'm super respectful. And in a way, they've trained me. My daughter's trained me really well in terms of like when they were babies, like me do it. And I'm like, okay, oh God, this is hard. I really want to do it for you. They've been training me since their births of the things not only they could do themselves, they wanted to do for themselves, right? So this opportunity to really recognize what kind of role do you want to have in that challenge with that other person, and what role do you sense they want from you, and maybe even having that discussion. So that's great when it's more of a personalized kind of challenge that's being faced. But the bigger example that I have is that comes to my mind is the bigger one of, we're recording this in 2023 and I still have vivid memories of spring of 2019 with COVID and the government and policy leaders' reactions, public policy officials' reaction to what we should do. Oh, we should shut down. And I'm just like, we're going to shut down from an airborne illness. I don't think this is going to go well. And I couldn't keep it to myself because there's a part of me with my audience and with my community that I feel like it's almost my job to offer my insights about things given my giftedness. So it doesn't mean it's going to be 100% right, but sometimes I get good reads on things. So I was, trying to be a voice for those that were feeling similarly that I'm not trying to be rebellious here. I'm not trying to be irresponsible, but this doesn't make sense. This is illogical, right? And then interestingly enough, now it's Dr. Drew is still doing a huge kind of post-mortem about what did we learn and bringing MDs on and educators and scientific researchers on, okay, what did we learn from what didn't go right with COVID so that we don't make those mistakes again. But at the time, Jill, I had a moment. It was late April 2019. I was active on social media, active with my community, just sharing, okay, let's keep an eye out for this. Let's keep an eye out for that. This policy doesn't make sense. I don't think that's the right approach, but okay, there's rules in place and laws we got to face. At the end of April, though, I remember just going, this thing could suck me in for a long time. And I don't want to become an expert at this. I don't have a background in public policy. Right. I'm not a medical professional, and I'm not a scientist. But my gut just told me some of this stuff was right. But I just felt myself I had my name on a voice of concern that I had put my own name on. And then I was just kind of peeling my name off of that, just going, I think I've said all I wanted to say, and there's other things I want to get to. And I could feel me becoming an angry, just kind of like militant, almost version of my Jill. And I was just like, I don't like this me. And that was a huge moment for me. And I think that happens in a lot of these types of roles. I don't want to be the watchdog. I don't want to be the police officer, meant to enforce this thing. And I don't have the heart of an activist. I really don't. I'm a lot more of a live and let live. And I'll clearly state my voice and opinion and views about things, but I'm not going to, have a sign and jam it down your throat. I really respect autonomy and individuality and self, agency, personal agency, that everybody gets to decide for themselves a lot of choices that we may disagree with. And that doesn't mean I'm assigned to make them change their mind. That to me is the heart of an activist in a lot of ways. That's not me. So it was just like, okay,
I got sucked into that also when I was, after I got sick years ago, right? And so my focus was on health. And at that time, it was environmental. It was a lot. It was my food. So I was changing a lot of things kind of all at once. And it did, it kind of had the same effect where I was just seeing how broken everything was, our food supply, how broken our environmental policies were, how broken our school system was and their food system. And it was just like, it was crushing me to kind of see all of this. I'm like, this can't be fixed, right? It is so broken. And my first reaction was like, we're doomed, right? It was super negative, super down. And then my second reaction to it, after, you process kind of, it's almost like grief. Then you just learn how to live. It's like you're saying, it's this live and let live. I'm going to be exposed to chemicals. I'm going to, drink water that's probably, been fracked. I don't really have any idea, right, what's going on. But to be so mindful I got to fix it. That's the problem with the fixer, is that you first have to see what's wrong. You have to look for what's wrong. And that's a mindset that will tank you. It tanked me. And so I had to shift up my mindset, which is, in everything, I'm just going to look for what's right. And it's not putting ice cream on shit. It's definitely not burying my head in the sand. There is an awareness that I don't want to be the fixer, because I just don't want to see what's wrong. I miss all the good stuff. You miss what's right if you're looking for what's wrong. You just do.
It's a trade-off, right? So
it is a trade-off.
In my example with the COVID, I just remember a moment of kind of another day of getting online and kind of, offering another viewpoint that I didn't feel was being well represented. And I just kind of had this icky feeling, and I had this sense of, I don't like this me. I don't like being this Jill. And it was just like, oh my God, like, what does that look like for me to not do this anymore, to not fight this fight? And it wasn't giving up, it was giving in to a situation that's bigger than me, right?
Yes.
So that's
And knowing that there's
I
somebody
love
else there.
and trusting, right? I
Yeah.
am a deep optimist. So when I take the big long view of how long humans have been on the planet, which that date of when we've been on the planet keeps going farther and farther back in history, which I just absolutely love. I think that's so cool. We've been through so much. We've been through so
Yeah.
much. So that huge, timeless sort of view that I have access to just goes, you know what? This does look like it could take us out, but every single generation has had some sense of an apocalyptic scene that everybody's going to be wiped out or a huge portion are going to be, we can't survive this. And they're always wrong.
Yeah.
They've been wrong way more than they've been right. So that data, that logic helps me just kind of go, maybe I don't need to lose my Jill, the Jill that I like best, to this issue or that topic. And I just stepped back from it. Doesn't mean I stopped caring. And for me, it doesn't mean I stopped looking at it. But I just stopped investing so much of myself into it. And that for me was
Yes.
freedom. And I gave myself back the Jill that I like best, which is aware and informed, but not an activist. I just not that I'm
I agree.
anti-activist. It's just not me.
I don't have that slow and steady win the race kind of activist. I'm like, it's an all or nothing. I have two settings, 0 and 100. I tell everybody. So this activism that just requires you spend your whole life toiling and, like even with the gun, the gun policy, it's like all those activists and they're like, oh, we got this little thing. And I'm like, I'd rip all my hair out. That is so unsatisfying to me. But I went through a period, because we like to give some ideas of how we work with stuff. So I went through a period. This was my detox of the fixer. Was I broke it into 3 categories because I was also in the apocalyptic, environmental, whatever space. It was knowing what's God's work, what's my work, and what's your work. Right. And so I put so much of that kind of big picture stuff, that unfixable stuff, into that's God's work, right? That's not my work. I'm just going to leave it over there. And then, so with everything, I was like, is this mine to fix? And if it was, meaning it was directly in front of me, what was directly in front of me was mine. And that's the way I looked at it. And so it was this sweep your own front porch. You don't have to go looking for problems to solve. You can stay pretty close to home, keep it pretty tight, and keep your fixer fed without sort of getting to that point where you're either obsessed or you're, to your point, Jill, you're sort of losing yourself in these, kind of, it's like quicksand, really. A lot of things are not fixable, and maybe there'll be a shift that and it won't be a problem anymore. But as it stands, the state that they're in with the information that we have, it's not really fixable. And I've become very comfortable with that. And again, not in a fatalistic way, not in a nihilistic way, just in, I'm going to continue to do me. And if everybody continues to sweep their own front porch, that alone will solve an exponential amount of problems. Yeah.
The other layer complementary to what you're saying is that our brains, we misidentify the problem and the potential risk all the time, right? All the time. It's like, oh, well, if I'm seeing this and this is going on, that means this, right? So that's where this catastrophic, apocalyptic kind of mentality and ideology and energy system starts to kind of creep in, right? But again, if you take the really, really long view of like history of humans on the planet or our relatives, right? The Neanderthals or something like that, you really look at it and just go, okay, so maybe this isn't going to take us out, right? But for anyone that has the ability to over catastrophize a challenge or a problem, it's really great to kind of be aware of your tendency to do that and just kind of create your own pause button and say, but is that true? Is that actually the foretold conclusion that because this is happening? Another weird example I have a family member that eats terribly. I mean, a nutritionist would be appalled at what this person eats on a regular daily basis. And I finally convinced that person, like, please just go get your labs done. Just see so that you can see possibly and be more motivated to make some changes there. And her labs were freakishly good. I was almost mad. Because when her labs came back and the certified nurse practitioner was just like, yeah, these are really good. And I'm just like, how is that possible? Right? When she told me about it. So I'm like, your body's a miracle because what you're putting in and how your body is high functioning, and she's a super high functioning person. But just what I know that she eats every day, I'm just like, I don't even see how this is possible. Now it does show, right, physically, that she's not skating, away from the challenge there. But on a mechanical, physiological level, I mean, she's high functioning on the output, on the daily functioning of her and what she achieves in life. And the lab results are just like, this is a miracle. So it's things like that that also make me kind of rethink just kind of this means that A plus B equals C, because we underestimate the miraculousness of humanity and the human body all the time. So I do give,
Because
this dose of grace there. Yeah.
We're working with, there are factors here that we haven't discovered yet. They're always coming out with different aspects of food. So we think we know, oh, vitamin C, you eat fruit because of vitamin C, the old thing. It's just, we're missing so much data and so much information. And the brain is really very good at going with very little data and forming an opinion on like one data point. And what I had to do also, another like tactic that I used for myself to work, this health thing had made me so crazed, right? Was that I had to look up why somebody said something was good for me. If I'm looking up chia seeds or I'm looking up, I don't know, eggs or whatever. And then I would go and make sure that I found the same article, saying that they were bad for me. And I wanted to do that so that I could understand, like, we're all just winging it. Nobody really knows anything. The brain just harps on things, and it usually harps on things that are, that put restrictions on us. Let's put it this way. Once the brain harps on something, we then act on that restriction that it created. So if it says sugar is bad for you, then we have to act on that, and we have reactions to those actions, right? We start to feel, some of us can start to feel like, well, I really liked that, and now I can't have that. So you get this, that you have to sacrifice to be healthy, or you have to sacrifice to be beautiful. The brain is starting to put what you love at odds with your health. And so I really watch those associations very, very closely. And it never really works out that if you just go by what you like or enjoy and you don't excess things, right? If you don't let the brain take you to an addiction of it, then our bodies are miraculous. They are filters. We have organs that are specifically filters.
Detoxers, even.
Detoxers. That's what they're there for. So we're not as fragile as we think we are. And that was another piece that I had to tell myself, like, Jill, you're not that fragile, because my brain was telling me this is in your food, and that's in your air, and this is in your mattress, and this is in your, and it made me feel like I was like a walking glass. So I had to train myself again and just say, you're not that fragile. And all of this was from that fixer mentality of there's always something better I can be doing. There's always something healthier. There's always something, meaning that where I am is wrong. And where I am is in a constant need to be fixed. So when we're talking about, the fixer, we're not taking it lightly. This is an addictive quality that takes over a lot of different areas. There's amazing function to it, but there is amazing dysfunction to it. And just look at your spectrum of, are you using it to get that enjoyment, or when does it turn sour and you start using it against you? And look at those areas, look at them all. Look at the global pictures, look at the myopic things that are closer to you. Don't leave any stone unturned.
Yes.
In terms of what you're trying to fix about you or the world.
Yeah. And I do love the strategy of starting with the process of, okay, so I'm doing this or I'm acting this way because I think the problem is this. And that problem seems to, the might of resources seem to convey that problem will lead to this. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. That you really just slow your brain down, just really take a breath, step back from that, maybe write that whole statement down for a moment and just step back. And for me, it's a pause of, is that even true? Now, I don't lean so much on the side of we don't know anything. That's not my operating system, but that could work, right? It seems to work for you, because I think I heard you say literally, what did you say, Jill? It was, we don't know anything.
There are so many factors that we don't know that are also contributing, like, for instance, to the health of that person.
Yeah.
Right. How can they be eating junk food? And, so there are other factors there. And I'm relying on the factors that we don't know, not on the convoluted, confusing ones that are contradictory.
Okay. And it sounds like your strategy, if I'm going to use the words literally from before, is let's just pretend we don't know anything. I guess another strategy I'll offer is, it doesn't have to be that we don't know anything, but what we know changes all the time. So for me, and that may seem so subtle and I'm, digging into the gray, I'm not meaning to, but I take words literally. So for some people, if that works better for you in terms of, okay, what we know today, it's in sand. It will change. I mean, those of us that are old enough to remember, okay, eggs are of course they're great for you. Oh, wait, not the yolks. You got to have an egg white omelet. And then there's other communities that are like, no, you only want the yolks. I'm just like, oh my God, we're all over the place, right? So I've created a tolerance and an acceptance for the variability in what we think we know and what we think we know is right. That has created peace for me, because my brain is no longer chasing they just said that was right. How can they both be right? And my brain will just start spinning and spiraling, and I'll start just shutting down, right? So for me, it's like, okay, they say this, they say this. We've got to make a choice. How are you going to do your eggs, Jill? You know what I mean? And then I just go forward. But again, I do have a deep respect for the human body and the amazingness of the human system, that it can accept far more kind of error or imperfections than we would give it credit. I'm so glad you brought up this whole topic of toxic environments, literally like mold and, food and all these things are just, everything is waiting to kill us. Because I have so many clients that I've met with over the years that are, I've had just I've heard amazing stories of just really sad situations of somebody that they feel like they can't go outside their house, they're a musician, but they feel like they can't perform because the level of mold and mildew and moisture in a bar environment isn't conducive for them anymore. They can't do it. They'll get sick. And I was like, but what about outdoor venues? You live in a 4-season climate. There's probably 5 to 6 months of the year where you could perform outdoors, right? And it was so funny because her whole focus had been on what she can't do. And I can't do that anymore. What am I going to do? I can't do that. Versus, like you were saying, in a way, what can you do? Let's focus on that. And maybe your
that's
ability.
Where the fixer is great, right? So we shut down the fixer when we should be using it, and we use it when we should be shutting it down, right? It's we have to watch it, because I, like you, say, where are we now? I don't care where we came from. What's the next step? right? And that's a beautiful thing to say, okay, I'm going to bring my fixer online for that. And it's almost like you're not going to fix the situation. You're going to, maybe it's when your fixer turns into like a thinker outside the boxer, right? So you're actually not fixing the situation that got you here. For instance, you can't fix the mold in the bar. And so does the fixing program end there? I can't fix it. It's permanently broken. We're done. No, there's another layer to that program, which is problem solving. But if you get stuck, and many people do, they're like, I can't get a job because I don't have that experience, right? And that's a dead end. So many of our, you know, our I can't fix things leads to pretty depressing dead ends for us. And you and I think, are espousing accept the dead end and pivot, right? Use that fixer to pivot. It's still a very functional program in the right hands. Yeah.
Yeah. And are you enjoying your you? And I think that matters. To me, that's such a big part of quality of life, and having a life that you feel you'd enjoy living again, right? That's a kind of a marker of whether you're enjoying your you in this reality as your incarnation. Is would you do you again? Well, not if I have to solve everybody's problems. Who asked you to solve everybody's problems? Well, not if I have to keep worrying about everybody. Who asked you to keep worrying about everybody, right? So
Yeah.
many choices. If we just give ourselves enough of a pause to reflect on, do you like that you? Are you forcing yourself into these roles and into these ways of being that you don't even like you? Why would other people? Right? Some people are like, I don't know
Exactly.
where all my friends and family went. Nobody wants to hang out anymore. Well, do you like you? Well, actually,
Not so much right now.
I will when everything gets fixed. Damn it, you know what I mean? I'm just like, well,
Yes.
what if those things don't get fixed? And in the meanwhile, you've lost so much of your enjoyment and your lively sense of you, and so did everybody else. You've been depriving everybody, including yourself, of the you that you could also be in exact with nothing having changed. Right? I'm
Yes.
no longer under the delusion that I can fix all of these things. Right? And that
Right.
it was a delusion. Wait, there's a lot of arrogance there, a lot of overconfidence there. So having a redefined sense of, yes, I'm a problem solver, but the humility of, and there's only so many things I can solve. And maybe it was
Yeah.
never my job to solve all those problems.
Yeah. I think that's perfect. It's a program run amok, right? Watch for that program run amok. And you did say, when you were just describing, we put ourselves on hold in anticipation of, I'll be fine when this problem is solved. Right. So there is a, like a, to use your term, suspension there, that's created. And that's another thing to look out for. Are you so focused on fixing this problem so that you could get on with your life? That's not a good sign, right? Even if you're suffering. So I've been sick recently. We've mentioned it on some of the podcasts we've done previously. And it was definitely some PTSD, going back from being sick a couple of years ago. And so it was this, kind of the brain kicked in all of the same, I got to fix this, I got to fix that, I need water filters, I need clean food, it all kind of came back. And it really got to a point where there was no food that I could eat that wouldn't set off whatever my symptoms were. There was literally nothing. And so my brain was kind of still saying, so what are the things you can't eat? I'm like, it's not about what I'm eating. Right? At a certain point, you have to realize there's something else going on. I have to get to the bottom of it. Stop trying to decide what I can eat. It's just it's an erroneous association. It's looking at the wrong factors. Right? So even within this latest illness that I had, I was thinking it was a food related, allergy related thing. It wasn't. But for many months, that's what everybody thought it was. And if I just got the right recipe of the right foods with the right whatever, then I wouldn't be setting off these very painful side effects. And none of that was it. And now I'm back to eating whatever it is I want to eat, and everything is fine. And, whatever infection was taken over my body seems to be slowly, thankfully working its way out. But it was again, getting into that not knowing what the problem was. And the fixer doesn't need to know what the problem is to start fixing. Without really understanding what's going on, it will kick in anyway. And that's the spaghetti at the wall method, which a lot of times I do espouse. When you have nowhere to go, just go somewhere. But it's not very efficient. It was definitely not efficient. Do you hear my pup?
Okay, we're back. We could hear Jill's sweet doggy in the background. Jill, do you want to?
Yes,
so she's okay.
She's okay, but she's got a lot to say right now. It's that time.
Okay.
It's switching hour for her. She's going to be a little vocal.
So I like this topic of addictive kind of problem solvers, and I like how well it relates to this idea of we misidentify problems or over dramatize problems all the time, right? I really recommend for people to get outside the bubble, because they tend to be communities that form around these problems. And in a lot of cases, that's not liberating. It's actually regressive and suppressive, because there's other opinions about a lot of those things that may actually be more effective and actually problem solving, or at least re-identifying the problem, right? And I mean, that is something like what I do, Jill. I know that that's something that you do. But I mean, anyone that's not in that bubble may serve, right? It could be somebody's life partner. It's like, yeah, I know that you're trying to track down all like we got to get rid of all the mold. But I mean, it could be your life partner that can honestly and lovingly and respectfully say to you, babe, we live in the world. We can't live in a bubble. Like, there's mold in the world. There's mold on the leaves when they fall, in the autumn. So let's maybe recharacterize what we're facing here. And maybe that'll help us be more effective at feeling as healthy and complete and whole and high functioning as possible amidst the challenges that we may never totally get rid of. I'm highly bothered by the situation that so many people in some of these kind of bubbles of thought, that they're really like, yes, if we just had this, if we could just get rid of the mold, if we could just have all the money for cancer research, then we get rid of cancer. And I completely disagree. Number one, I don't think we can ever get rid of all the mold. And let's be realistic here about, okay, what's in a problem zone, and is that metric actually realistic? Because lead levels and all that stuff can change and be variable in certain situations. Yeah, I wish it were in a way that simple. If we just had all the money for cancer research, then we wouldn't have cancer. I think that's a lie. I really think that's a lie. A lot of politicians, when they say, yes, if we just had the money, then we could, end this and homelessness. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. And I don't know if they're lying to us or lying to themselves. I just don't believe that's true. I think it's bigger than money, right? It's a bigger, complicated,
money is
messier
not the problem.
Exactly.
Right.
But that's what the fundraisers won't tell you, that we're this many hundreds of millions away from our goal of, creating this center and, doing this research. And I mean, it's not that it doesn't do anything, but it's not the full solution. It's bigger than that. And I like honesty with ourselves so that we can be literally more real and authentic and sincere about what we can solve where and what we need to make different accommodations for, so that it prompts our compassion versus keep activating our brain and chasing solutions that in some cases waste money. That pisses me off.
Yeah, I mean, and even just the way, for instance, the government works right now, right? It's such a behemoth, right? It's such a slow worker that by the time, the problem that they're solving for was 10 years ago. I mean, there's just no, it just even in a timeline fashion, where a lot of things we do just don't make sense, right? And that's the unreasonable reason that you and I talk about. And the brain is very good at looking at something, and it's very good at gaining consensus and see everybody agrees with me, and it's still just dead wrong, right? And so I think we agree on the fact, do I have to throw everything out? No, but I'm much more cognizant of what my goals are when I'm thinking about things, right? And I'm also just kind of cognizant that, yes, everything right now is our best guess, right? It's our best guess. And those guesses change. And even science, it's our best guess with what we have. It's not the ultimate truth. What I say, what is true is always true. It's not evolving truth. What is true is always true. And so when you look at something and you say, is it always true that this person behaves like that? Is it always true that money will solve this problem, right? Is it always true? And then when it's not, that's where choices come in. And choices are what we get to do here in the face of not knowing what the problem is 90% of the time, and not knowing what the truth is maybe all the time. Seriously, right? And so we get to choose. And that's why I say I throw that stuff out, because I don't want it to muddy my thinking. I want to know what I think. I want to know what I feel. And that's the questions you're asking. Do you like your Jill right now? Do you like who you're being when you think this way? That's a red flag. That's not something to just push off to the side. That's really, really important. The way you think about yourself, what your thoughts make you think about yourself, right? The quality of your life, the quality of your thinking, the quality of your pursuits. There has to be a function to it that ends you up in a good place. If you've cut everything out of your life because you're afraid of your environment, you're afraid of your food, you're afraid of your friends, you're afraid of guns, you're afraid of who knows what, there is no life there, right? Your brain has taken over your existence, and it's left you with basically no choices. It's disturbing.
And the lack of it is disturbing, and the lack of free will involved. I have witnessed so many times individuals that they're not aware of how a certain challenge or problem from their perspective has hijacked their entire sense of being. There is a guy named Sam Harris, and I'm going to forget his book. I didn't read the book, but he has a podcast. It's kind of in the vein of mindfulness. He studied directly with the Dalai Lama, like he had the robes on and everything, and he's gone full in. And then he got, I think, a PhD or a master's in some sort of cognitive research. So he's a very interesting person. And while President Trump was President Trump, when Trump was president, he, to me, lost his mind. I mean, he was so busy making sure that his audience knew that not only he was not a supporter of Trump, he thought Trump was basically akin to the Antichrist. And I think Sam was Jewish. Anyway, so there was just this whole, like, he went overboard making sure that we all knew that he wasn't a Trump supporter. And in hindsight, I realized it's because his audience was a mixture of political ideologies and a mixture of different, presidential voting record. And to me, it seemed in retrospect, like he was just wanting to make sure that he would never be called a Trump supporter by anyone that would, that was more Democratic leaning and definitely anti-Trump. Like, well, you have Trumpers in your audience, so that he could go, no, I try to push him out every day. I try to make sure they know that I think he's a big orange man, a big orange baby. So he's insulting, he's condescending. It just felt amateurish and emotionally immature in a lot of ways. But that was just I haven't listened to him since, because regardless of my voting record, it didn't matter. That wasn't why I was there. but his overreach of to me, he lost the Sam that I know I liked. He lost it to this thing, this cause, that this activism that he just couldn't let go of or wouldn't let go of. And I don't really care to hear anything else he has to say after that. But I'm sad. I'm sad about it. And I wonder if he did that in his personal life too. I know he's a dad with kids younger than ours still. And I'm just like, oh, that would be so sad if he's just busy being mad that Trump was ever in office and could ever be in office again. It kind of
Yeah.
breaks my heart because he's such a interesting, intelligent, thoughtful, caring person, and he just morphed into
Look,
this.
everybody has their
Ugh.
threshold, right? I mean, everybody has their threshold when it's almost like, I'm good, not good. It's like, who knows what's going to drive us over the edge, right? In my case, it seems to be medical shit all the time, that just like, I'm good. And then I get hit with some wacky situation, and I imagine people are saying, that like it makes you crazy. It was literally making me crazy. And I just didn't know what to do with myself. And so all of the Zen, all of the stuff that I practiced, it was definitely for a time just kind of out the window. Right. I'm like, I got to get a handle on this. So, but I think that's where I'm kind of coming out, is that, and I think I've heard you say this too. It's like, this is a chaotic place, right? Where we live. There's not always an immediate solution to what's ailing us on any level, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically, existentially. We don't immediately have those answers. And I think we have to give ourselves just a lot more space to be in the space between, I don't know what's wrong and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I can fix it. How do we live there? Right? That's a really, like in Sam Harris's case, he's like, I can only live after Trump is out of office. But look what's going on now. There's no end point to that. There may not be an end point to my illness. I just don't know. And so this idea is, we have to figure out how to live in this. I'm not even calling it uncertainty, right? That's not really what the issue is, at least not for me. It's, how do you live when things aren't fixed? When things aren't solvable? Doesn't mean they're terminal. It just means that they're not, I guess, yes, they're not under your control, but nothing really is. So again, it's not that. But for me, it was just like, I'll be okay when, right? There was this real long pause for me. And I want to figure out how to not pause. I want to figure out how to live without, the problem, not knowing the problem and not knowing the solution.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer to that.
I have some ideas, but I do want to go to one thing that you said. You said nothing is in your control. I want to make sure you really believe that. Do you believe nothing is in your control?
No, there are things that are not that I haven't figured out how to control. Okay. So no, I think I have a lot of agency, and I think that what's in my control is how I respond to things. And so I want to do better in terms of what's in my control, which is responding in that gap, right? How to be in that gap and be perfectly okay, even if I'm not okay.
Yeah. To me, that's the invitation. That's the beginning of the invitation to really living, right? Because it's so self-delusional for any of us as individuals, especially that are idealists. And I think we've done a different podcast on idealism and perfectionistic, right? Which relates very closely to this topic in a good way. This idea that, well, I know you don't understand, Jill. I can't be okay. People would say to me, I can't be okay because my kid isn't perfect yet, and I'm not perfect yet. And there's this to worry about, and that to fix, and that to solve, and this big thing that's a train wreck and whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. So you're putting on hold, I would venture to say perpetually, you being the you that you want to be, you being the you that you like to be, and you living fully alongside the messiness and alongside the imperfections that are everywhere, while also giving yourself more space to create and explore and be curious about, okay, what does a me look like that's not pretending anything's going to be perfect anytime soon or ever, right? I had to go through exactly that process. And it was kind of fun because my brain was filled with self-deception
Yes.
about what was real and what wasn't real, and what was going to be perfect and what wasn't going to be perfect. And I love that part of my brain because she's an idealist, she's super creative, and she gets stuff wrong. That version of me gets stuff wrong all the time. So I'm normally watching out for her, and that's way better.
And I do want to back up. It's not that I don't have the answers, is that it's for me, I know that it's my brain that's literally stopping me. It's my brain that's in my way. So when I get sick or something happens that I can't stop thinking about it, that's my obsessive nature that I have. That was the PTSD that kind of came in. So I typically, my brain, I've managed to quiet it very much. But when I was sick, the obsessive, looking at everything as a symptom and thinking that everything was related, and the brain, trying to connect all the dots to something that was just crazy. I couldn't just have a pain. It had to be related to something else. So my brain was highly creative, highly in the wrong direction, right? And it was really that looking for a needle in a haystack, an unsolvable puzzle that it was then going to put itself on. So it was my job at that point to watch my thoughts very closely. And the couple of things that I did was, I don't know what that is. If I had a pain or if I had something happen, I'd be like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. And that's my way of stopping my brain. Other people have different ways to do it. But for me, I always say the best way to shut my brain off is to get stupid. Just be like, I don't know. I know what my brain wants to say it is, wants to say it's, the beginning of the end, but I don't know what that is. And so that was a big, I had to pull that one out of the closet. I haven't used it in a really long time. But it had to come back out, and I had to just be like, I don't know.
Yeah, we're seeing your sweet doggie in the background, by the way. So
I know.
I'm sending her love. I want to let everyone know she just turned 16, everybody. So she is definitely she's a senior. She's an elder lady puppy. And Jill's on top of it. And yeah, she's definitely like, oh, what's going on? Yeah, I don't know. We're wrapping up here. One final thing that I'd like to add is that as we are, as professional fixers or, perpetual fixers, whichever, sometimes I think we pretend that other people aren't aware of what we're thinking just because we're not saying it. So I have a loved one that in a work environment, they were saying, they were kind of concerned about someone's, behavior and their choices. And I said, like, so what did you say that to them? And they were like, oh no, I never say that to them. And I'm like, but you're thinking it. And that they can pick up on what you're thinking, right? Energetically, you're basically transmitting what you're thinking, whether you say it or not. And that person was just like, wait, really? And I'm like, yeah, they don't have to be intuitive. People can get a vibe. Anyone that's paying attention can get a vibe that, oh, okay, that person is not approving of what I'm doing here, or looking at me weird when I do this, whether you're the best poker player or not. So the strategy for that is to be aware, right? Of, okay, these are my thoughts. What do I want to do about these thoughts and about this concern that I have, for a teammate at work, or, a friend or family member or whatever. And by taking some of the steps that you and I, Jill, are talking about, they can actually reconfigure their brain to not even have those thoughts, or to add new thoughts. That's my favorite strategy is, oh, yes, I agree. I wouldn't do the job the way that they're doing that job, but they're not my job, and their job is not my job. So I'm going to just let those thoughts go because they're unproductive. They're a waste of my time. I'm not doing anything about these. I'm just letting them sit there, and it's creating possibly more attention for that person to do their best work.
And I really like that because I think one of the, kind of precursors to fixing is that judgment, right? And people feel judgment. And so to watch your brain judging in service of fixing, right? That is, they go together, right? You have to have judged something in need of fixing, which means something is broken, something is wrong, somebody is wrong, right? So I think if you're really intent on figuring out this fixer, you can actually start with judgment, right? And just see it, because to Jill's point, a lot of times you may have the judgment and the idea of fixing and even say, okay, that's not my job. That's keeping your fixer alive and, to your point, putting out sort of negative energy out there that's associated with that. So a big part of this is recognizing how you approach people, how you approach situations. If you're bringing your fixer, you're bringing judgment. That's the first thing out of the gate. And that's painful. And people do feel it. And, I think I suffered, from that a lot, actually, just socially, is that people felt me coming with my ideas. I was so proud of my ideas, and it really, it's just not, I don't know, it's just not the thing to bring to the table is that kind of judgment. And so don't protect judgment when you're starting to work. I know that, there are certain things that are discerning that you need to decide for yourself. But I'm saying when you're just beginning to do this with judgment and fixer, don't find rationalizations and justifications for why you're judging. Well, this one is an outlier. This one is, it's justified. That's not a good way to start. It's kind of like when you're doing a fixer is anonymous, you got to go cold turkey. You can't have the occasional drink, so to speak. It's a practice.
It's a
discipline.
And I unfortunately need to run. So the other strategy is you don't have to give it up cold turkey, but you just monitor it more diligently and be more consciously aware of it. Because I guess what I would love to say to all the perfectionistic, perpetual fixers and problem solvers, you're more than that. You can be a great listener. You can be very compassionate and kind-hearted and a warm, friendly person that people like to hang out with, and they enjoy your company, not only because you're good at fixing. You're more than that. And sometimes the brain doesn't help us see that. So we're here to help you see that.
I think
so
that's actually a great, I saw that as my value. I thought socially that's how I added value. Mm-hmm. So that was what the issue was. And that's why I brought it around with me all the time. All right, we're off.
Love you, Jill. I love this conversation. I hope it was so helpful. And if it was helpful to you, if you enjoyed it, thank you so much for sharing it with 2 friends. Thank you so much for liking it. And if you're subscribing, hit the notifications. Thank you for all those things. It helps us know that we're assisting and supporting you, which is why we're trying to do this. Okay, sending love to everybody.
All right, Bye-bye. Namaste. Ciao.